Kate Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Before I start with this very sad story, I wanted to thank all of you, all of my subscribers who've stuck around, and welcome my new subscribers. And I understand that it's been an adjustment for everybody, but hang in there, it'll get better. And in the meantime, be sure to check out all the usual old stuff is now behind the paywall on Substack, plus a few little things that I've written. So having said that, thank you, welcome. I really appreciate and value everybody who watches these videos. So in the interests of distracting everybody, I know that true crime is so popular, and I have a story here today that I've thought about for a long time. There are stories like that that just return to haunt you. And when I decided I was going to do true crime, let me turn off my heater, it's noisy. When I decided I was going to do true crime a little bit, once in a while, this was one of the cases that came to mind immediately. So last week I started writing down the facts, and lo and behold, not very long ago, a month or so ago, there was new evidence. Really synchronistic, really interesting, because this is an older case. It happened in 2000, so it's older. So before I start telling the story, I want to make it really clear, I'm not a detective, although if I could reincarnate as Agatha Christie, I'd be happy with that. But this is not about all of the cumulative, most up-to-date, accurate, conflicting facts. I don't have access to that or time to do that kind of hugely deep dive. And there are a lot of people who do a good job out there on podcasts and on the internet, on YouTube. What I'm doing is I'm telling the story, just to introduce the story to people. Now, I was thinking of doing this for, well, no, let me correct this. I was thinking of doing JonBenet Ramsey. And then I thought, everybody does JonBenet Ramsey, and we all have our opinions, and there's unbelievable conflicting information there. And why is everybody so obsessed with it? Because she was a cute little white blonde girl. And I thought, there are so many children and especially young women who are murdered or who disappear, who are not little white blonde girls, and they get essentially marginalized and ignored. So I wanted to highlight this case because it is just really sad and really disturbing, and I think it deserves attention. So this is the story of Asha Degree, who was born August 5th, 1990. And she went missing in the very early hours of the morning, like basically the middle of the night, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, in the year 2000. Her parents were Harold and Akila Degree, and they were actually married on Valentine's Day in 1988. So she disappeared in the very early morning hours of her parents' anniversary. She lived in a residential subdivision on Oakcrest Drive in an area called Shelby, North Carolina, which is basically a developed area in a less developed, bigger area at the time, near West Charlotte, North Carolina. Harold was dock loader. Akila worked at a big piano manufacturing factory. So they both got off work probably 5 o'clock. The kids got off school early, and they always were called latchkey kids. They let themselves in when they came home. And these parents were very strict, and they had a rule that when they got home from school, they had to finish their homework before their parents got home from work, and their parents checked. She had a brother, and so it was just the two kids. They really insulated their children from outside influences. This is pre-internet, pre-smartphone, so there was a somewhat easier time of doing that. They had a life that was centered around their family, their church, and their school. Asha was described as a cautious, shy little girl. She didn't question her parental limits. She was young, what was she? 2000. Yeah, she was not quite 10 years old. She was about 9.5 when all this happened. And her mother said she was scared of dogs, terrified of dogs. What her mother said was, I never thought that she'd go outside the house, especially not in the middle of the night. She was in the 4th grade at Falston Elementary, and there was a 3-day weekend of February 11th, 12th, and 13th. And her parents had to work, but they were out of school on the 11th, and so they had stayed at their aunt's house. It sounded like the family all lived kind of together. The grandmother was down the street, the aunt was across the street, and they were a very close family. So they stayed at the aunt's house, and they went directly from her aunt's house to basketball practice at the school. Although school was closed, they still had basketball practice. On the 12th, the next day, there was a game, and her team lost, and this was the first game they lost, and she felt responsible. She cried with all her team members. They were all crying. If you've ever been to a little girls' sports event, there are a lot of emotions. Emotions are high. But she recovered quickly. She got over it, and she stayed and watched her brother's game, and everything was good. On the 13th, which was a Sunday, they all went to church, and they went home and went to bed at 8 o'clock because they had a tight schedule. They had to get up early the next day. They went to bed at 8, and at 9 o'clock, there was an accident in the neighborhood, a car accident, and a car hit a telephone pole, and the power of the area got knocked out. So it sort of disrupted their plans. They were going to go take a bath and things like that, and I guess it happened right around the time they were going to bed, and they didn't have hot water or lights or something, and so they postponed everything till the next day. So they went to bed, but everything came back on at 12:30 at night, and the dad, he was awake, so he went around and turned off lights and music and whatever, and checked on the kids, and both kids who shared a room were sound asleep. He went to bed at 2:30 a.m. Valentine's morning and checked them again before he went to bed, and they were sound asleep. After her father got into bed, her brother heard her bed creaking, and he was half asleep, and he thought she was just turning over or something. He didn't think anything about it. But apparently she got up, she took a book bag that she had that had been pre-packed, and they figured out later she had several sets of clothes and personal items, and I'm assuming that would be like a toothbrush or a hairbrush, something like that. And she left the house with this backpack. Keep in mind, there was a huge storm. It was pouring rain. Between 3:45 and 4:15 a.m., a truck driver and then separately another motorist saw her walking along the side of this main thoroughfare, like a highway 18. And there was a storm raging. She was in long-sleeved white shirt and white pants, and they both thought, that independently of each other, thought, that is really weird. That's too young of a child to be out in this weather in the middle of the night walking alone on a busy highway. Not busy at that hour of the morning, but ostensibly main highway. So the motorist turned around, he said, because it was strange to see a child alone and out at that hour. And he circled 3 times to try to, find her and get to her. And she noticed that he'd done that, and she ran into the woods and disappeared. Later, the sheriff said he was sure that it was Asha they spotted because of the description of the clothes that she was wearing. And they know by process of elimination, it's not like she had this gigantic, extensive wardrobe. The sheriff said that the cops saw her at the same place. I guess that wasn't elaborated upon, but I'm assuming that meant that they had driven by and seen her. Very interesting. They didn't stop. 5:45 a.m., the mother got up and turned on the water in the bathtub because now they had hot water and lights again. The power was back on. And at 6:30, she tried to wake up her brother. O'Brien was his name. It's kind of a cute name. And Asha was gone. She wasn't in the room. He was in his bed. She wasn't in her room. They searched the house, the yard, inside the cars. They went across the street to the mother's and they checked everywhere. They panicked and called the police, who arrived at 6:40. They came with scent dogs, and the dogs could not find her scent. But keep in mind, it had been absolutely pouring. The whole neighborhood actually canceled all of their plans and formed a gigantic search party. Their pastors from their church came to give them support. She had no cold weather clothes with her, no raincoat, no boots, no nothing for the cold weather. So later, they found a shed in the woods near the spot where she had run into the woods. And when they investigated, they found candy wrappers that were the same candy that she had at some point had received candy very recently, and process of elimination, they figured this was her candy. They found a pencil, a green marker, and a yellow hair bow that were all hers. I have to assume that they could identify the pencil as hers because, children have those fancy pencils. We always had pencils with unicorns and, painted on them. And they're not just the plain ordinary pencils. Also, with that stuff that did belong to her, they found a photo of a young black girl close to her age, and it was never identified who this young girl was. This was the only trace of her that was ever found in the initial search. Her mother knew that she had been that she had taken her favorite jeans with a red stripe up the sides. She had taken those with her because they were missing. So they were able to figure some of the stuff out that they could be looking for. After about a week, the search was called off. They had spent 9,000 man hours in a 2 to 3 mile radius of the house looking for her. They'd put up posters. They had more than 300 tips. The sheriff, in this case, I have to say, it seemed like the sheriff was proactive. He really came on. He urged the media to keep the story alive. He brought it up all the time. On February 22nd, so this would be about a week later, he announced FBI and North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation would be involved. And they put her in a database of missing children. The sheriff insisted still on following every lead himself. He was really proactive. The police believed that Asha had planned and packed ahead. She wasn't abducted from her room. Now, why did she leave and where was she going? We'll have to look into that in a deeper dive behind the paywall on Substack, I'm just saying. And we may have a conversation with Debbra Lupien about that as well. They said she's not a typical runaway, for one thing, her age, but also said the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children said most runaways are over 12, usually younger kids. Their fear of they're too young, this is a generalization. She had no issues to run away from. She got along well with her family. She got along well with her brother. There are no implications that anything untoward was going on at home. We don't know what else might have happened. There was not a dysfunctional family. It was a really stable, I wouldn't say regimented, that implies too much control, but it was a stable, predictable, supportive, loving, extended family. She was very good at school. Her academics were good. The police think that she left on her own volition and then was abducted. The family went on Montel Williams and America's Most Wanted and Oprah. March of 2000, the cops did a full billboard on Highway 18, like when she was last seen, where she was last seen. In May of 2001, racer Travis Kittleson some kind of car racer, put her picture on his car at an event in Concord, North Carolina. This was broadcast live, and that was a really perfect opportunity to get her face out there. And with any luck, he said, maybe we can bring her home. August 3rd of 2001, her book bag with its contents were found by a construction crew that was digging up an area 26 miles from Shelby, from her home. It was wrapped, double wrapped, in 2 black trash bags. And it did have her name and phone number in it. That's how they knew it was hers. But when they looked at it, it was immediately sent to Quantico to the forensic lab. And the results weren't shared for a long time, but we're going to get to that. On the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, Valentine's Day of 2020, they revealed the contents. There was a book, a Dr. Seuss book, McElligot's Pool. It had been checked out of her library at school, but it hadn't been checked out by her. We don't know if it was checked out under somebody's name or just stolen from the library at school. They didn't say. There was a girls' children's size New Kids on the Block t-shirt that was not hers. That was it. So there were no useful leads. One tip that they got, that they pursued, led to digging up the bones of an animal. In 2005, her picture was put on Servpro vehicles in North Carolina. It's a water cleanup company. And on Republic GDS, a waste pickup company. They put them on all of their vehicles. They said, we're doing this for one reason only, to find Asha. The FBI created an age progression photo, and they put both pictures, what she looked like, and then the age progression one, on 28 of both companies' vehicles for between 30 and 60 days. In 2008, her parents created a scholarship in her honor. There's an annual walk. Her parents are still looking for her. This is heartbreaking. It wasn't held every year on Valentine's Day. Because of the nature of Valentine's Day, they thought, people are going to be distracted by Valentine's Day. There's that. And then it's a bummer. You're looking for a poor lost little girl who disappeared. And it just seemed unfair to ask people to do it on that day. And also it might dilute some of the concern for her in a weird way. So they held it around Valentine's Day, but not on the holiday. When she was interviewed, the mother, the journalist said that the house is just full of pictures of this child. And her mother said, I fully expect her to walk through the door. It's sad. In 2013, the mother gave an interview and lamented how little attention Asha's case got. Far fewer mentions, far less attention than Little Missing White Girls. She said, and I quote, I know if you ask them, they'll say it's not racial. Oh, really? She said, I'm not going to argue because I have common sense. So, yeah, true point. February of 2015, FBI, the sheriff, and the state investigators decided to re-examine the case, and they re-interviewed the witnesses. They established a reward of $25,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction. Somebody else in a community group put in another $20,000, so it's a $45,000 reward. May of 2016, the FBI announced new leads. She may have been seen getting into a dark green early 1970s Lincoln Continental Mark IV, or perhaps the same age green Ford T-Bird, at the spot near the woods where she was last seen. In 2017, the FBI Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team began assisting with the investigation with technical support and behavioral analysis. They worked with other investigators for 10 days. So ongoing investigations with all these people still continue. They meet several times a month. Since 2017, they have done over 300 interviews. In 2018, they appealed for information about the book that was found from the school library and the girl's t-shirt, New Kids on the Block. In November 2020, an inmate named Marcus Mellon said that she was murdered and he knew where she was buried, and nothing came of it. So then we come to September 24th, and this is what surprised me so much, because here I am suddenly motivated to do her case. Lo and behold, after all these years, now there's a new leads. September 24th, law enforcement issued a search warrant based on physical evidence. Not remains, but, quote, multiple items of interest. They didn't go into details, including the green 1964 AMC Rambler, which apparently in the dark, in a storm, might be confused for those other cars. So they think that she was killed and concealed. They got DNA possibly from the backpack. They got DNA possibly from the backpack. So they actually have persons of interest. A husband and wife named Roy and Connie Dedman. They seized a car, a green Rambler AMC. They seized a car, journals, black trash bags, a human tooth, child's clothing, computers, and laptops from their house. Well, two houses because they're split up. They linked Asia to a girl called Annalie Dedman Ramirez. Now, who is this? This is the 13-year-old at the time when Asha disappeared, 13-year-old daughter of the Dedmans. They found one of her hairs on Asha's undershirt. They don't say where they found her undershirt. I could not find it. It's so interesting. I couldn't find the information. This young girl, 13 years old when Asha disappeared, had two other sisters, 15 years old and 16 years old. And law enforcement is saying if they were involved, they would have needed adult assistance. But they searched their home and they searched the assisted living facility that the family owned. They also found the DNA of a guy called Russell Underhill, who had lived in at least two of the facilities belonging to the Dedmans. I guess they ran a series of nursing homes. He had died in 2004. He knew and associated with Roy Dedman. So these people are linked. They're all people of interest. They took some of the items that they collected that I mentioned actually came from his house. The tooth, the car, those were Dedmans. At the time of the searches, the couple, they weren't living together, but they searched both former husband and wife, I guess, I don't know, separated. They searched the assisted living facility and the local hospital along the same route that Asha took. So here's the story. His daughter, Dedman's daughter, often drove patients to and from that local hospital along the route that Asha walked that connected the local hospital to the assisted living facility. I'm getting hiccups. The assisted living facility. And this teenager would drive patients for them. Sorry, hiccups. But they said that her car was unreliable. Roy denies involvement. The family believes, Asha's family still believe that she's alive. So what happened? We're going to do a little deeper dive. I'm sorry, on Substack. I will alone, and then I will do it with Deborah. And I have to go because I have the hiccups really badly. I'm sorry. So I just do this for Asha's family. My heart breaks for them. Her poor mother is clinging to the hope that somewhere her fully grown daughter is still alive. And I can't imagine the emotions I would harbor every time I turned on the television. There's another John Benet Ramsey video. That must really hurt. So we'll keep Asha Degree in our thoughts and hope that something will happen and there'll be justice for her and peace for her family, a resolution to her family's grief. Not grief, but not knowing. Sorry, I swear I've had nothing to drink. Okay. Thank you very much for watching Song of Foil. Sláinte. I hope this was distracting. I'll see you later.